Hello, everyone.
Hello!
Bright suns or rising
Bright
moons,
suns.
as it were, for those for whom the sun is not shining currently.
I think we are successfully less laggy this week.
Now that you said that,
It'll get worse. I ruined it. Oh man, we got Dale and Stuart and John and Jetman. Oh my gosh, hello everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
should have tied a ribbon to the wishing tree.
No more streamline, please.
The only bad thing about the wishing tree in Batuu is that every time I think of the wishing tree, I think of the song "The Hanging Tree" from Hunger Games. I'm like, well, this is a
This is
different
way
thing.
sadder. This is way sadder. Hello, Gina. How's it going?
Both YA novels, but very very different ones.
Very different.
For
Very
instance,
different.
for instance, I like the romance in this novel.
In this novel. Ugh, don't even. This is as per completely off topic. I remember I watched and read Hunger Games in the weirdest order. I watched one and two, watched two, and then watched three, and then read three. So I was really probably I made everyone mad. But I remember watching one, and it took me like I don't know why, because I don't hate the actor, but I hated Gale so much within like 3 seconds. And I believe my friends have it recorded somewhere along the line. I said, "Gale, go clean the mines with a toothbrush." That was the level of hatred I apparently had for this character that I cannot explain.
I
But there
just
you go.
remember I was sitting and talking to some of my friends as they were making Team PETA T-shirts,
Yeah.
and I was like, "You realize this is like a series of novels about like violence and the way our culture like appreciates it as entertainment value and like the
Mhm.
oppression." And they were like, "What?" And I was like, "Never mind. We got different things out of these novels." But anyway,
Oh man.
we're not here to
So
talk about the Hunger Games, as a matter of fact.
for about Crash of Fate, so Crash of Fate, which is a novel.
It is.
How do
It
you
is.
think how do you think Izzy and Jules would have fared in the Hunger Games?
I think Izzy would have been all right.
Yeah, I
Jules
think she was.
Jules is very PETA, um,
Yeah, I was gonna say he's very
but
no we're but farming and not baking.
they would have made out in a cenote while they were skinny dipping and would have gotten all the sponsors. So
There you go. That's true.
um,
That is true. Uh,
but
gonna our Crash of Fate spoiler stream, Stuart. So if you need to duck out, we will not hold it against you.
try to give people some time before we get in super spoilery stuff. But if you're unaware, Crash of Fate is, I guess, a tie-in novel to Galaxy's Edge, to the new area in both Disney parks.
Yep.
Um, and I will say too, before we get started talking about it, is that's one of my favorite things about A Crash of Fate is that, and we'll save our discussion of Black Spires for another day. But I
Mhm.
love the extent to which these books like put you in Batu, where you can feel
Yeah,
yourself
for sure.
in Black Spire Outpost.
I think lagged there and was making a weird face for Here's Stuart and welcome Jordy. It's good to see you both.
So just
Um
don't make weird faces, and you don't have to worry about
oh well, thank you.
it.
So helpful. But no, that was definitely my favorite part of A Crash Fate is I really felt like I was on Batu and it was I don't know. I don't know when I would get to go to Galaxy's Edge. It will be before I die.
Hmm.
But but it really felt like I could be there and like understand the culture. And now I feel like I'm gonna be that whenever I do get to go, I'll be that super nerdy um like fan now that's like, there's the wishing tree. I brought mine uh to put there. I was ready. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was just looking at Dale's question on
Oh. Oh, it'd be
Black Spike on. We were just talking about Crash of Fate today.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, I think he has credit on like Audible, and he's trying to figure out.
Ah,
I
okay.
I see now. Um, yeah, all of
But
those are good. I enjoyed them all. But
mhm,
I will also say about Crash of Fate, before we get into specifics, just as kind of a general review.
mhm.
I like this. I really love this book a lot. Like I don't want to under but I am not a person who is predisposed for romantic stories,
Right.
and
Neither of us are really.
I still really liked this. So
Yep.
if that's like, I know a lot of people have like feelings about YA novels in general, which is, it doesn't make sense for me as people who like Star Wars, given that it's always been aimed at a younger demographic. But
Right.
but if you were worried about, a young adult romance novel being a thing that would turn you off, I don't think that's something,
Right.
because I really enjoyed this. The characters are really well done. It's
Mhm.
done in a really compelling way, and I really got a lot out.
Yeah. My favorite was that this isn't much of a spoiler, but for like, as we said, this will be a spoiler stream. So if you want to duck out, my other besides loving the feel of the culture of Batuu, I love that the whole book, minus the very, very, very beginning, was one day.
Yeah,
And I thought that was a really fun thing. And what's weird, usually when I read Star Wars books, I try to get through them as fast as I can, but I also do like to give them time to breathe. But
hmm
when I realized The Crash of Fate was one day, and I had started reading it really early that Saturday, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get through this in a day. And I pushed myself and I read the whole book in one day so I could spend one day with Izzy and Jules. And it was really fun. And it added a lot to momentum of the story. I think is that you just kind of get swept up, which it makes sense because for most normal people, if you go to Galaxy's Edge, you will also only be there for a day.
right. Yeah, I guess that's true. Um, I mentioned this to you too there, when we finished it, or right around the time we finished the novel, that I
Mhm.
really hope that when eventually I get to go to Galaxy's Edge, that there are, two like teenage interns that are just paid to make out in an alley somewhere all day.
Somewhere. I was really hoping that like it was going to end up being a thing where maybe Izzy and Jules were there at the park, but no one knew them yet because the book hadn't been out.
And it still may be the
Um,
case. I would imagine people
it's
would
yeah.
have seen it, but or no.
Um, Now this is very much spoiler because I'm going to talk about the book. But the book ends with the First Order showing up in mass. I'm wondering if the end of the was the end of the book supposed to be like when like Galaxy's Edge starts,
That was kind of
or
my
was
impression, because like I
yeah
know if you go to the park, like there's already a first order occupation like
there
going on, because
and
like Kylo
and
Ren is there, and
yeah, and I've seen video that's supposed to be of like Kylo Ren's shuttle landing and him coming out onto the scene for the first time. So I don't know if that's true, but that was at least the impression I
yeah, me
got.
too.
But that was fun too because then it reminded you like, oh, because Izzy and Jules were pretty removed from the bigger conflicts within the galaxy, which is part of what made this story interesting too. And so then to kind of be reminded of the greater conflict book from reading it, if you're not into romance stories, obviously if you're into romance stories, I think you would get even more out of the book than I did. But if you like stories that are really about everyday people just living their life in the galaxy, like this is one of those stories. I mean, there is some intrigue with Izzy and her family's back, or her mother specifically backstory. Um, but for the most part, it's just really normal people living really normal space lives. Um, and then seeing how they get impacted by all of the mess that the Skywalker's cause by existing.
But in addition to that, like I mentioned before, it really does kind of set the stage, like for the things that are going on in Batuu too. Like you meet Oga and meet
Yep.
Doc Ondar. Like
Yeah,
like
Doc.
like I
I think
remember,
Doc's like my new favorite.
like I was hungry when I was reading this, and that's not always
Yes,
the best thing. But
me
like
too.
it's like describing the tip yip, and like I looked it up, like I wanted to see a menu for
Yep.
like the restaurants, and I'm like, oh no, this is a thing I could get. Like I
Yeah.
want to go to Ronto Roasters. Like I need to
Uh,
eat this. It needs
there's
to be in my
there's
stomach.
so much throughout. And at first I was like hungry, and then no, just like there's constantly food through the whole book, and I was like, you should not read this book without snack because you will get hungry.
But it just does so much. Like that's one of the things I love about Star Wars books in general, is that
Yeah.
they can do so much world building,
Hmm.
and to have that world building be for like an actual place that you can go.
Yeah.
And to like be able to, like I mentioned this to you the other day, that I really want to go back and reread Thrawn Alliances, because now I feel
Right.
like I have, such a handle on like what Batuu is and like what Black Spire Outpost is, and even
Right.
like spatially, I've not been there, but like how things are organized.
Hmm.
That it's a different type. I mean, even from like film locations, like I feel like it's a different level of understanding place.
Yeah.
So like all of these Galaxy's Edge tie-in things, they've done a good job of. I don't want to say selling you on it, because I don't think it's just a marketing thing, but of like
Right.
putting you in the place.
Yeah. And it's the culture is so interesting because Star Wars has a long tradition of having your favorite planets or cultures where not necessarily my favorite example, but for a long time there was a big appreciation among some fans for Mandalorian culture made by a specific author. Um, but then
I don't know who
there's
would like
other
Mandalorians.
Mandalorians I like, but this isn't anyway. Whole other group of people. But you know, you, there's the different guidebooks, like all the stuff Dan Wallace makes, where you do get a sense of the culture. But this feels like the most complete culture they've done right from the get go. That they really tried to do this rather than have like just a park where they could have had like the Tatooine building and the Hoth building and the
Right.
Naboo building, and that'd be so easy to do. And I still talk to people who think that's what Galaxy's Edge is, and I start like, no, no, no. Like, let me explain to you who Park really is. Um, and the book captures that so well. And you just walk around and you feel like, oh, I feel like I could go there and just totally be able to role play and like know exactly like to be there. And
I am kind of bummed. I'll admit that they they don't allow costumes in the park.
right,
Like,
I've really have learned how to like just dress so you look like you're from Batu.
yeah,
Um, but
almost
yeah, that's
cosplay guide.
right. I've been hoping. Well, the other thing is it's in Anaheim and Mando, so depending on the time of year that I went, assuming I wouldn't die in it, I want to wear my resistance jacket.
Right.
If that counts as being too costumey, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Um, I wonder if that would be a thing that the characters would come.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, I've also had the thought of just wearing like a regular jacket and having like there's a couple hats you can buy with like the First Order logo on it, and I wanted to like wear a First Order, but then like have like Superman style like a resistance shirt on and like play it up and just like get in good with all the stormtroopers and
Either a
like
spy or you're very confused.
right, one of those two. Who knows?
um, but to talk a little bit more specifically about
Yeah, the
the
book.
like I like, as you said, that it happens all in one day. But
Yep.
one of the things that I really appreciated too is that the beginning of the novel is set like way in the
Yep.
past.
Yep.
Because one of the things that I always struggle with romance novels is the let's fall in love really quick kind of thing, and
Right.
to think that these weren't just people who bumped into each other on the street. who had a history. Um, like that's one of the complaints that people get, for Attack of the Clones is
Right.
is that
Oh, yeah.
this romance happens out of nowhere all of a sudden, but
Yep.
but you have that kind of long term connection such that they recognized each other, like as
Yeah.
soon as they ran into like literally ran into each other.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think Izzy punches him, right?
Well,
She's trying to like
she's like banging on the door, and he opens the door, and she hits him in the
boom,
face. um, but
you know?
I really liked Izzy and Jules as characters.
Yes.
I like that Izzy is very headstrong and self assured, but also like vulnerable and like
Mhm.
understands where the limits of her skills are.
Mhm.
And Jules is so earnest and well meaning, but is still, for lack of better words, still just like a farm boy with
Yep.
like big dreams of the world. And there's such an innocence about them that allows them to navigate the stuff that they run into,
Yeah.
almost in that kind of Luke Skywalker kind of way. That both made it feel Star Wars, but also were things I really enjoyed in the two characters.
Yeah. Well, and that's a balance, especially with Izzy that is done so well in the new canon where you will have more female characters. Can tough, but still feeling like a so with Izzy, you immediately feel bad her 'cause she basically got dumped on her birthday,
Yeah.
or the day before her birthday or whatever. I think it was her birthday, in like the worst way possible by this total sleaze. And he's the type of guy where like if you were Izzy's best friend, you would be like, he's trash. And she can't see it, or does see it and chooses not to. And that was done really well. And then I liked with Jules, they kept his one of his it was one of his friends or maybe his sister. Somebody made a comment about how he like falls in love with a new farm girl, like so that he's done the puppy love thing fairly often.
I think it was one of his friends because they were like, "You didn't take her to the wishing tree, did you?" Because that's like his move is he meets
Right.
a girl and takes her to the tree and like
I
tries to
agree.
have this romantic moment.
Yep.
Um, but like there's so much, like the history of it is there too. Like when he takes her back to the house that they used to live in, and it's
Yeah.
been like burned by the fire, and she's able to like find this thing that she left there as like a kid. Like
Yeah.
like you really feel like a connection between the two of them, despite the fact that their paths have diverged so much. That you really like. There is a discussion of fatedness through the novel that
Yep.
is there in the title. I really like that too, especially for people who are not Jedi, but who have
Mhm.
kind of an understanding of Force philosophy and like the
Mhm.
idea of the will of the Force, the sort of fatedness of things like that. There's a definite undercurrent in this book of that too.
Yeah, with the I mean even with the wishing tree cuz it was certainly implied, it might have been spelled out all the way, I can't remember now, that Jules had effectively wished for Izzy to come back. Because she asks him, like, "Did your wish ever come true?" And he goes, "Yeah, but um, and so there's just that idea of like, did the wishing tree work, or is this all just one great wild coincidence? And I like that it really played with it, and it really had all of those tones, but it never necessarily said like at no point did the forest shaman pop
Right.
out the tree and go, "Ha ha, it worked, guys." Um,
Force Ghost Yoda shows up and sets the wishing tree on fire.
That's what Force Ghost does. He just he sets trees on fire and also is a great matchmaker. It was low key one of his best skills in the Jedi Order. No one knew, but he could match him up. He was better than Tender.
He's so upset from that scene where Dooku tries to tear up the tree in the Jedi Temple that that's what he spends eternity doing is destroying trees.
Destroying trees. Like, dang it! You kids think that pulling up trees is such idea. See how it was made.
Oh, you kind of cut out there
Wait,
for a second.
I said, you know what you just did though.
I did. I realized it as I was doing it this week. That was our
It's always you every
that was
week. I
our
feel like
obligatory Kevin Scott reference.
every Kevin Scott reference.
So we've checked that box off at the halfway mark.
We have not yet determined if Kevin thinks this is creepy or nice. Uh, but he hasn't blocked us, so for what that's worth.
but I don't know. I thought that the discussion of fate though was something that kind of elevated it just beyond. I mean, the same way that Lost Stars, like loyalty, was
Yeah.
the theme of that, in a
Yep.
way where it wasn't just a sort of happenstance romance story. It was,
Mhm.
we're going to have these undertones, because to me that's something that's very Star Wars.
Yeah.
Not just about the setting; it's about the tones
Mhm.
of the things that are going. I really appreciate. And like you said, I like that it doesn't give us answer
Yeah.
to that, but it kind of lets you draw your own conclusion.
And well, and what you were talking about too, with them visiting the old house, and then they talked about um, they were making references to, like, I think it was Jules's mom that Izzy knew, or like they had connection with each other's parents as well, and that was really nice too, to go to what you were saying of even though the whole book takes place in a day and the romance blooms in a day, that they had this foundation before, and slowly getting more and more of that revealed really helped for me as well. And you get this idea that perhaps if Izzy, this is naturally where things would have gone anyway, but at the time they were too young to ever consider anything. Um, at an age where you don't really understand. And then to add the tragedy of, Izzy was literally there one day and gone the next day because of her bounty hunter mother, as it were.
Well, and it's interesting too because like it is so much that outside of this context would be coincidence. Like he just quit his job the day before.
Right.
Like Doc just needed an extra guy that day because the
Yep.
first order stuff was happening and everybody's assistant were signing up for like a better job or something with the
Yep.
first order. Like everything just completely fell into place for him to even be the person that she smacks in the face knocking on the
Yep.
door. And like that Doc was tied up in the back room so that
Yeah.
like the door was locked in the first place. Like all of that, um it
Just so happened. Yeah.
and you can, without the context of everything else, it is a really nice young adult romance story. But with that context, to me, one, it makes it
Hmm.
so much more Star Wars, but it made it so much more meaningful to me
Yeah.
also.
Well, and even down to, she got dumped by her boyfriend and what's her face that led the group, and then they
Anatola.
ended up going. Yes, yep, yep, and they ended up going to Batu, to the point where they thought that Izzy followed them there like a lost puppy, and really she was going to do her own thing, and they happened to be at the same planet. It was all woven together really well, and then there were serious implications of it, and with the fields being burned down, and I that was interesting too, because we had seen so much. Well, not, everything we'd heard about Black Spire Outpost and everything we'd heard about what was going to go on at Galaxy's Edge was that culture in the trading town, but then to kind of learn how the economy worked across the planet, um, really nice.
I mean, and it makes sense as like a wild space kind of planet.
Yeah.
That it is distant. I liked I liked getting all that fleshed out. Like when they go to the farm that his sister, and
Hmm.
they're interacting with all the kids that are like on their lunch
Yeah.
break, and like, are you Jules's girlfriend? um, Like there was a lot of that I appreciated.
The
Worked really
overprotective
well.
sister.
Yeah.
Yeah. My sister's like, you need to get out of here. You're I can tell. And I liked her pet. I like that she got a pet.
Oh yeah, the what was the type of bird that it was that was also like part other thing?
I never remember anything's name in Star Wars, so I'm the wrong person. I'm You're lucky that I can remember that it's called Star Wars most days. And it's on my shirt. But no, it's just because Star Wars has so many creatures, and it has you'll have all these wild creature scenes, but so rarely do people have pets. And so I really like that, and the idea did the pet even like them, which
Didn't
was funny.
didn't Jules name it Lucky? Was that it?
I think it was Lucky. Yeah, name.
But even that tied back into the discussion of fate because
Yeah,
like it's Lord of the Rings, the big bird shows up right in time, to help save. Um,
just take those eagles to Mordor. Eagles. If you watch how it should have ended for the Hobbit, eagles solve every problem that we have. Anyway, getting
but
off topic again.
but there was other things like I liked the scenes with and I can't remember the character's name. So bad at
Yep.
but the one that's like working for Hondo who accepts
Yeah.
the shipment by mistake and then
Yep.
Izzy shoots her and there's like a couple of chapters like no you shot me I'm going to beat the crap out of you you shot me
I'm
with a
not your
blaster.
friend because you shot me. Well, that was the whole thing too, where the Jules was so proud of himself because he bought that ship, but really he sold Izzy's thing. Um, that was so classic too. Where it's just everything that could go wrong was going wrong. And there, you had the classic. I mean, there were so many of those wide book scenes, and I say that because they're one of those things that people pretend they're too cool for, but deep down you enjoy. And it was the scene where Izzy is calling out her ex-boy toy, and he's just embarrassing her in front of Jules, and Jules is so protective, and I'm like, this is so much angst right now. I can't even handle it.
It's funny to me too because the boyfriend's name is Damar, um,
Yeah.
which immediately to me was a clue that he was a bad guy because Damar is one of the leaders of the Cardassians in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, um, which I'm certain is coincidental. Um, I doubt very
But
much that was intended, but
you never know.
worked for me.
Alternatively, I could see the Kardashian. So
Huh.
either way.
But even like just the sort of misadventures that they had across that one day,
Yeah.
like I liked that it was a tour of Black Spire Outpost that wasn't just a tour of Black Spire Outpost. It was,
Right.
we're going to go to the creature shop and some shenanigans are going to happen. And Doc is missing at Doc Ondar's, and we're going to go to Oga's, but because we have this secret deal to make with her.
Yep.
And there's I don't know, there's so much intrigue going on there around Izzy's past.
Yep.
Which is to say too, I think it would be a shame if this was the time we ever saw these characters.
They keep doing this Star Wars book. They keep giving us really great characters and then just not letting us meet them again. And this
Hashtag
trend,
where is Ray Sloan? Um,
this
but but like I liked that it was, as Dale says, immersive without being
Yep.
like
Well,
in your face, or like it didn't give you like a map of the Disney park and say they weren't
yeah.
talking about
Well,
the princess's
this
castle in the distance.
right, yeah. Here, look at square D7 and see what's there. No, and that was I try not to get too much. You and I both try to avoid too much discourse about discourse here. But just kind of generally looking at Twitter, which is never a healthy place to look for people's opinions. I'd seen different people who were complaining either about this book or about Dawson's book, Black Spire. And they're like, "Oh, look at the marketing. here it's just a giant Galaxy's Edge commercial. I'm like, technically, every Star Wars book is a giant commercial for Star Wars movies. So first of all, it's really interesting to take an issue with time. I'm like, go, watch your Star Wars TV shows and play your Star Wars video games and wear your Star Wars not also what to tell you. But I just didn't get that from the tone in this book and far in Black Spire, in what I've read at all. I feel like it was very naturally, like, just because they're eating Ronto roasters and I can go buy a thing that's called a Ronto roaster, like, it didn't feel commercially to me. It felt like everything was just kind of there, in a way that would be organic.
I mean, if it was meant to be a commercial thing, then it would have mentioned Coca-Cola and the sign and Sprite and like it.
What is this Coca-Cola? What is a cola?
If they had wanted it to be commercial, it could have been. So the fact that it isn't, to me.
Yeah.
But to the extent that it might be, though, I'm just glad that decisions are being made to market. Because
last I heard, Star Wars markets itself. Bob Iger. But sorry, half of this StreamCast is always Django and I's inside jokes that no one else gets, and I wish I could say I'm sorry about that, but we're not gonna change, so it's fine. But like, and I don't know. This book made me excited to go to Galaxy's Edge, and I guess maybe that's a bad thing. I mean, like, it would be naive. It's naive to say that this book is not an advertisement to also go to their Disney park. But you can make an argument that their Disney park is also an advertisement to read these books. Like, there's always in there. Even think that it's not mean you have to be cynical about it and be like, I don't want to enjoy a thing because Disney World has children in it and they're loud. It's like, it's a book, you can read it or not. And what I struggle to phrase this correctly because I don't want to make it sound like it's a negative about the book or dismissive about the book. But if you don't want to read a book that's a tie-in novel to a Disney park, and maybe you don't want to read a book that's a romance novel, like, the point of this book is that it is just a girl's lives. Like, we did not get Snoke's origin in this book. You don't necessarily have to read this book to get the Rise of Skywalker, but I think that's what's good about it. Like, that's what is so strong about an expanded universe for something like Star Wars in general, is you can tell these stories that don't have to be who's Snoke. It didn't turn out that Izzy is the half sister of Rey. Not everything has critical with it. And
well, but at the same time, I think this was so well done that even though I don't think it needs to justify itself, I think it does. Like, I think this story, as being a story that happens about regular people, of course, of one day, is so well told that I feel like it justifies having stories that don't have to be Snoke's
or, right.
Who's Rey's mom, Luke and Callista, important things, but Tarkin trying on jumpsuits, but but like it takes a place in the larger galaxy, makes references to things that are themes that exist across the franchise, but also exists in this one moment, in this one place, for these characters. And it's a story that's compelling in a place that's compelling for characters that are compelling. And I don't see what fault you could find in that. Like, if you don't want to read good books, then maybe that's I don't know what to say to you.
Well, and what I say too is, you and I both are big fans of the Legends universe. I have several Legends books. You have several Legends books sitting behind you, right? But one of the biggest weaknesses of the Legends universe is every book had to change everything before was going to be the next book. Every book had to the super newest super weapon, or another Skywalker solo being born, or some other new thing. Like everything, and a lot of those stories are fun, and I enjoy the vast majority of Legends. But A Crash of Fate is a sign of how I think the new you just has their priorities in mind, where they can go, okay, no, not everything has to change the universe. Some of it can just reveal, and that's why I get so excited for books like this. It's like, oh, I can get, like, there's so much more room in the galaxy when you can tell stories that are just the other people, versus everything has to be so critical. And that's something that I think they're really getting right. And there certainly are books that do have the bigger implications in it. We're doing the book series on Bloodline right now, but the book has to be or can be Bloodline. Some of them are. I don't know. I feel like these microscopic looks are so important if you want a bigger universe.
I mean, but at the same time, like, it's not as if it is so far removed that you can't find Star Wars
Oh
in
yeah,
it. Like,
absolutely,
like they
absolutely.
like they talk about the Force. They run into the
Yep,
Resistance. First Order
yep,
invades and is
yep,
having rallies in the street. Like,
yep.
you're getting all of that stuff that situates it as as a part of Star Wars. Like, you can see the
Yep.
ways that it is part of the larger story, even though
Yes.
it is this smaller glimpse at how these things affect regular people. That's one of the things I liked most about the Aftermath trilogy, was especially in
Mhm.
the first novel, where you get to see those interludes
Yep.
and see how all these things affect regular people. Like, I think that's an important part that was missing from Star for a long time.
Mhm.
And books like this, again, particularly really well written ones,
Yes.
do a lot to to sort of give us something that was always missing in a way.
Yes. Mhm. Yeah, and, I mean, like I was saying before, like, I am so intrigued by the character of Doc Ock, and that he seems like this reasonable dude, but he seems reasonable until he isn't, because you have the Doc list. I love the idea of the Doc list,
Yeah.
um, where once he doesn't like you, like, you're just in trouble, and, like, he's somebody I want to see more. I wanna see him interact with Maz. I wanna see him interact with I would love to see Hondo trying to talk to Doc Ondar and, like, get something out of him. You know, and I don't know, it just I'm just gonna sound like a broken record, but this was a prime example of just an atmosphere book to me in the Star Wars universe.
I mean, and like Black Spire's doing some of this too. Like,
Yep.
like I have the same feelings that you have about Doc. I mean, I love the character of Doc too, but like, for
Yeah.
like Salju, like, who's
Yeah.
running like the speeder repair shop, and
Yep.
like characters are like fleshed out in a way that just
Mhm.
so real, and then to
Yeah.
know that it's actually real.
It's there.
Like
You can go meet Doc.
like even if I never went to the Galaxy's Edge,
Yeah.
I would want to read these novels. Even if I never read these novels, I'd want to go to Galaxy's Edge. But knowing that the two things intersect, like,
Yeah.
just make both kind of more meaningful to me. I feel like I, I feel like I would appreciate Galaxy's Edge better having read these novels. I feel like
Mhm.
I've read these novels and appreciated them more, knowing that like
Yeah.
that's what I want from Star Wars. Like, I want it to feel personal. I want it to feel real. I want it to be a thing I can. And
Mhm.
I think this book does a really good job of doing that.
Mhm.
And on top of it being a really well told romance story. I know we don't have a like I don't particularly have a whole lot to say about that, just because romance is not my thing so much. But it's really
Right.
well told, and I really felt for the
Yeah.
characters, and I wanted them to go hide in a cave and make out some. So like it was a good story. Like, I would watch that, ABC Family miniseries, whatever.
Right.
Um,
Well, yeah, and, like, I enjoyed it too because it was something that knew what it was doing, and so often where I can struggle, maybe the reason why I say I'm not as into romance is maybe I've just seen one too many, like, badly told. But with this one, there were awkward, cringy moments because they were supposed to be, because people are awkward and cringy, but, like, not because the writing was awkward and cringy. And it's such a fine line to be able to do that well, and have it where you can read it and go, "No, I know this is cringy because neither of these 2 people know what they're doing, not because the author doesn't know what they're doing." And to be able to recognize that it's which one of it that is, it was nice. Made it it made it more to read because you're like, "Oh, these 2 confused kids are just trying to figure out their life."
I mean, but like at the same time though, like you're right. What made it better for me was that it seemed so like genuine,
Yeah,
and like I teach like 18, 19 year olds for a living, and so
yeah.
like they seemed like people, like they seemed like not just this like let's have the most romantic romance thing ever. So
Right.
like it's not Romeo and Juliet. Like I feel like Romeo and Juliet has tainted the way people feel about teenage romance stories. So I mean, I know it did for
That's
me,
probably fair. It
but
did for me too.
like it wasn't that. Like they were real characters who,
Yep.
talked about like fate and like falling in love, but
Mhm.
are also like socially awkward and
Yeah. Well,
and I love, to that end too. I think it's really good that we got the two POVs in the story that kind of give us
yes.
both of their inner monologues about like we
Yeah.
get a glimpse into who they are as people and the insecurities and the thoughts that they have and things like that
Mhm.
too.
And it worked too because they were both aware of, "Hey, it's pretty crazy for us to fall in love in a day, but it seems to be happening, but, it is kinda wacky now that you think about it." And even though where the book ends, I if I remember correctly, there's a mild jump towards the end, I think. It's not as dramatic as the beginning, but I
I
could
think
be
you're right there.
misremembering. It sounds so terrible, but, like, I anyway, that's the problem with reading a whole book in one day, is you don't get time for it to settle because 'cause you're like, "I just threw that thing, man." But, even where it ended, like, you knew as the reader, because otherwise, what was the point of the book that they were gonna, like, end up together? But even where it ends before the mild time jump, they're like, "We don't know if this is gonna work, we're just gonna try it." And, like, that was another thing I appreciated, and then with the mild time jump, you kinda got the idea of, like, "Okay, this is working," and you got to see that. But that was another element that I liked, that it was about this crazy fateful day where with all of this sweeping adventure. But even at the end of it, it was, hey, this sweeping adventure means we're gonna try a thing, not like, and then they got married 24 hours later, um, which still could have worked, but
Yeah.
no,
I mean, but it
I
also wasn't
appreciated that.
like that epilogue wasn't the Hunger Games epilogue either, where it was like these two characters are really messed up and like I guess they sort of love each other because they had a kid and the end. Um
That's how you prove they were in love because they had a child.
but like the epilogue we get is like he's learning to fly and they're having fun
Yep,
just being together.
yep,
That's what we should want for people.
yeah.
And the like it like I don't know what else to say except that it was just a really well done story. Like it was written well, the characters were compelling. I really got into the story in ways
Mhm.
honestly that I didn't expect.
Yeah. Well, it was another one hard for me to articulate it well, but it was an easy read. I don't mean that in that it was a simple read or a basic read, but like I didn't have to get stressed. Like there was emotional things, yes, or the one scene I talked about where she was talking to her boyfriend, or the the scene where they're talking to Aga and Jules like has the bad news about who her mom really was and how much it tore him up to be the one that had to like say the words to her. So you had those kind of angsty emotional knife twist moments, yes, but I was never stressed out like mentally reading it, even though I was feeling it emotionally, so I could sit and read it And it was nice. It was nice. It was literally a sit and read and relax. And it wasn't a book where, I struggle with books that are overly technical, where it's like, and then he flew 45 degrees to starboard and made a 95% dampener turn upward. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just gonna flip till there's dialogue and hope that no one died, because then I'll be confused. Like, that's how I am in so many books. And I'm like, what does this matter? Like, what do any of these details matter? I don't know. And where there's some people who live for that kind of writing. Where with this book, it was like, yeah, there were details and stuff was explained, but like it was all like nice. It was all like, oh, I know why, got the reason why I'm being thing. Um, but that was just like, it really was a perfect pick it up on a Saturday and go play around in Star Wars book.
The only thing that approaches that, I guess, is like her discussing how soft his lip. But she didn't talk about the pitch that her head was at as she leans in to
Oh my god! Can you imagine?
I adjusted
like,
my yaw.
some kind of can you imagine like a really technical book, like written like that, like degrees of like a head angle, and like, oh my god, I'm sure this on one of the fan fiction sites somewhere. I'm sure that's something. But like, man, that would be great. No, I think you and I we were texting back and forth about the book, and it was like, there, you knew the point where they were starting to fall for each other, because there were at least descriptors of like, and then he accidentally looked at her mouth, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you two, you guys are ridiculous.
But like, that's so like, I don't know. I feel like that's so true to like.
It is completely true. But it was like, oh my gosh, and it was that point too. It's weird to describe the book as a slow burn because it all takes place in a day, so it's not really a slow. But like, the author does make you work for it. Like, you do have to like read a significant portion of the book before you get any kind of payoff like that. Which I appreciated, but it was like, you two are so just did not like, it's like, what is wrong with you guys? Like,
When
you
it's
both
like,
know.
he wants to ask her to stay, and she wants him to ask her to stay, but he's afraid to ask her to stay, and she doesn't want to bring it up. And so like that's just like such like real interpersonal stuff, though.
Yeah.
That I don't know. It really worked for me.
Yep. Oh man. But I spent a lot of the book going like, what are you two? What are you two even doing? What is this? But and like, to have all that, but then you have this other intrigue of, the fire that had wiped everything out, and then Izzy's mom's past, and there was a lot going on within the book, and even to talk about interpersonal relationships, I liked that as we learned more about like Izzy's parents, and how like the mom was always very cut off. She was the type of person that couldn't have relationships in the same way, and that the dad always loved her, but that they struggled, and that sort of thing. And how you compare that to what Izzy and Jules were feeling, and how you know she doesn't necessarily realize it, but she gets to have something more than her mom had, even though her mom had like this super crazy interesting life that I would love to get that story as well, I think.
I mean, or even like the fact that they dropped Izzy off at like New Republic pilot school.
Yeah, like, have fun.
But it also kind of reminded me a little bit of the
Yep. Always talking about the graphs, you know that.
if we hadn't already made our.
That would have been another good one. I mean, we definitely make more than one, so, to be fair.
But any other thoughts about the book? We're kind of
We're getting near time. Is there anybody in the chat that has read it that would have anything that they'd like to comment on? Like, who was your favorite character? What was your favorite part? That sort of that sort of thing. Uh, no, it's like I said, there's just everything to me about the book worked. Like everything together really well. Like I said, the cultural explanation, the um, just the way the book was framed, with mainly being one day thing, going back and forth between the different perspectives. I think really, and I always appreciate that too because I love writing where you learn so much about the character in the way things are being described, right? Like I think that, and there's a lot of really good Star Wars right now that are in their own way, uh, to frame something not just in learning about a character because you know their thoughts, or learning about a character because you see what they say, but like seeing what one character notices. So seeing like the things that Izzy would notice versus the things that Jules would miss, right? Because like Izzy is relearning her planet, which was an interesting thing. She's not just the person, it's not the stereotypical farm boy city girl, because she's from this planet too. So she's kind of like coming back and remembering where she's from, and to see like the planet through her eyes, where she's relearning a thing versus Jules, who knows it inside and out, and framing.
I mean, and this is that it's the closest thing she's ever.
Yeah.
Like, it's even say like after they left.
Mhm. Yeah. Definitely.
If you've not read this, I would definitely encourage you to.
Mhm.
It's really good. It definitely it more than accomplishes what it sets out.
Yes.
The book I can see myself returning to if I know I'm gonna go to Galaxy's Edge,
Yeah.
coming back in.
The biggest piece of advice I've gotten from people who have gotten to go to is to take A Crash of Fate or to take Black Spire with you, and then read those while you're in the line
Oh, that would be cool.
for whatever you're doing. Which would probably be a good idea. But yeah, I could definitely see myself, especially years before or just after, whenever I would go to Galaxy's Edge in the future. But yeah, it's good. Like Sen says, it leaves the warm and fuzzies. It
Mhm.
is, as so many stories are in Star Wars, ultimately about hope, and ultimately about good things, and good endings, good, nice, happy endings. I think that's a thing on everyone's mind. As we now hit 100 days. Today's 100 days until the Rise of Skywalker. So let's just think about all the nice, warm and fuzzy, hopeful endings, where everybody's happy for the next 100 days.
I don't know that I can say anything else except for follow us on all the things.
All
You
of the
you know the places you can find us. Go ahead and like that stream while you're here.
Yep.
Subscribe if you haven't. Hit the notification bell. You'll find out when we go live. We kind of had a different schedule last week because of life thing. So if you're
So
following
many
us
life
on Discord or getting
Yep.
those notifications, you will find out when we go live, whether it's a game
Yep.
stream or other stuff, or when we put up other videos. If you're not following along, I'll plug this for you. It's still early on in your book club read through of Bloodline. If you
Yes.
want to jump
It is.
in, it's still a good way to get into another one of our favorite Star Wars novels.
Yep.
And we will, in the future, I know we want to do a Black Spire StreamCast in a
Yep.
couple or soon. Anyway, I don't know what the exact
Soonish.
schedule will be for that. And we've got some other ideas coming up. But if you have ideas for things you'd like us to talk about, let us know
Yep.
in the comments or on Twitter or on Discord. All of those.
And I'll just say, the author of Crash Fate, Zoraida Córdova, is on Twitter regularly, and she's super cool. So if you have read this and you want to shoot her, I loved the book message, I'm sure she'd be happy to hear from you. She is definitely one of the more responsive creators on Twitter. So I would highly recommend you guys following her and seeing what she's up to.
And she's really active on Instagram.
I'm not, so that's why I don't necessarily know that.
But until next week, that's going to do it for us.
Thank you all so
Yeah.
much.
May the spires keep you.
May the spires keep you.
Bye, guys.